Good morning. It's cold here in Hong Kong. Well, it's all relative. I think it's about 15 degrees, but for us, that's cold. So, a fair bit to talk about today. Got a couple of good movies that are opening in Hong Kong today, although one was sort of floating around for the past couple weeks with just like one-off screenings here and there. But now it's officially open today, and a little bit other news. First, I'll talk about the Macau what's it called? The International Film Festival and Awards Macau, IFFAM. I was in Macau last weekend to see some films there. This was their third event. They had Nicolas Cage as their big Hollywood star, and people think I look like him. I don't see it. But one of my friends says, "You don't look anything like him." I go, "Yeah, he wears a toupee and has had plastic surgery. If I did that, I'd look like him." So anyhow, he was there. He was interesting. I won't say much more than that. But he gave a press conference and yeah, and then a master class. I didn't go to the master class because I was seeing a movie, but I did go to the press conference. So it was interesting. Yeah, there were some very good films. I saw Green Book there, which I'll talk about. It opens here in January the something. Yeah, it opens in about 3 weeks' time. So I'll talk about it then. But I've actually reviewed it. If you want to read about it now, it's on my website. And I saw The Favorite starring Olivia Colman, Rachel Weisz, and Emma Stone. I haven't written my review up for that, but go see it. Really good. And then I saw a couple other films, French film, pretty good, German film, and then a mainland Chinese film, which I didn't really care for. So, not bad, not bad. So, yeah, and we have a bridge that going to Macau now, but I didn't take the bridge. I took the ferry. The ferry's fine. Nothing wrong with a ferry. Yeah, so that was it. And that was the first thing. And then, so in terms of what's opening today, the first film, which I'm not going to talk about because I haven't seen it, is Nicolas Cage's film Mandy. It's a horror film. And yeah, I don't know anything about it, so I can't even talk about it. Sorry. Maybe I'll see it this week and then I'll talk about it. But the other two films, which I will talk about, have very interesting theme, similar theme. They're about two women who are desperate and they do desperate things in their desperation. So very interesting. One is not true, and the other is based on a true story. Like one is fiction, the other is based on a true story. The first film, which I'll talk about, is called The Kindergarten Teacher, and it stars Maggie Gyllenhaal, who's Jake Gyllenhaal's older sister. Now, I say that, and I wrote in my review, that she's not as famous as her younger brother, but then somebody said, yes, she is. Okay, okay. Look, I think he gets more press than she does, which may not be, worthy. I don't know. I think she's a wonderful actress. We don't see too much of her compared to him, but she's won a Golden Globe and he hasn't. So, she's got something up on him. So, in The Kindergarten Teacher, it's based on an Israeli film of the same name, except it had the Hebrew name of Haganenet. Agan, G-A-N, it means garden in Hebrew, but it also means kindergarten. So the Ganenet is a female kindergarten teacher, and Haganen is the kindergarten teacher. So it's written. It was a 2014 Israeli film by Nadav Lapid. So now it's been Americanized. They've changed the script a little bit, made it more American than Israeli, and now it's written and directed by Sarah Colangelo, who did a film a couple years ago called Little Accidents. And as I said, stars Maggie Gyllenhaal. Now the story is that Maggie plays a young woman, not young, 40, it depends on your perspective, by the name of Lisa Spinelli. And she's a kindergarten teacher in New York who becomes obsessed when one of her students, she believes, is a child prodigy, and when it comes to poetry. And Lisa, as we learn, she lives a rather empty existence. She goes to work Monday. Sounds very familiar to so many people. She goes to work Monday to Friday at her underfunded school at Staten Island in New York City. She's very safe in her marriage to Grant, although it's not really, there's no love there. It's more, you know, comfort. And this is, they've been married for 20 odd years or almost 20 years. So there's not, if there are any sparks in that relationship, they went out a long time ago. She's got two teenage kids, a boy and a girl. They're more interested in social media than they are in having any meaningful conversations with their parents. Very typical, very typical. And she goes to a poetry class at the local college once a week, and that gives her some pleasure. But her writing is dismissed by the other classmates who think it's rather derivative. They're not impressed. They're a very competitive bunch, but they're not impressed with her poetry, and neither is the teacher, the class teacher, Simon, played by Gael Garcia Bernal, who we know starred in Neruda, and he was one of the voices in Coco, and he was in the TV show Mozart. What's it? Mozart in the Jungle. So this is her life, and so one day everything sort of changes for her because she notices her 5-year-old student Jimmy, played by I think he's Indian, little Indian boy by the name of Parker Sivak. He rattles off a poem, and it's far deeper and far more original than anything that she had ever come up with. And she quickly jots down the poem and presents it to her class, but as her own work. And everybody in the class is very impressed with the poem and impressed with her. They say, oh, you've found your voice finally. You're not giving us this trite stuff. You're giving us like real deep stuff. And even her professor, who suddenly sees her in a whole new light, which is, this is a woman who gets no attention. And now suddenly she gets attention, especially from somebody as handsome as her teacher. And so with that, she encourages Jimmy to create more poems. But Jimmy doesn't think of it as poem. For Jimmy, it just sort of spills out of his mouth. It comes when it comes. He doesn't give it any thought. He's just like a normal kid who just sort of spouts poetry. So she's afraid that his talent is going to go to waste. So she goes to his father and wants to encourage this, this talent of the boys, but the father really doesn't care. The father wants the kid to play, sports and, run around and be a normal kid. So Lisa just gets more frustrated and she decides to take matters into her own hands. And that's when she blurs the line between what's good for the boy and what's good for her. And that's all I'll say about the story. It's a very slow burning film. I got to say, if you're expecting action, this is not the film for you. It's very slow, and it has a potential to be a psychological thriller, which it doesn't. I'll reveal that it doesn't quite get there, and I'm glad it doesn't, because that would have been a mistake. So it moves at it doesn't drag, but it moves at a very slow pace as this sort of it unravels, and we start seeing Lisa unravel basically. She's a very flawed character. She's sad, but you know what? She's never mean. She's never dangerous. She always, she loves the boy, but she makes mistakes. And I think she represents so many women and men. I don't know that men would react like this, but women her age and older who've had dreams of something more, but then life gets in the way. That's what happens when you get that age. Life gets in the way. You have responsibilities, and I can see, with her is that, she's got, her emotions are empty, and she's got nothing left to give to anybody. Although she's still trying to give, but she really's got nothing left to give to anybody. And actually, no, I take that back. She gives to everybody. She doesn't give to herself. That's the problem. She doesn't give to herself. And this is a kid. She's finding that it's giving to herself, and that's when she makes the mistakes that she makes. And so, but as she's making these series of mistakes, you understand it and you feel sorry for her and you think, okay, you can accept it. It reminds me a bit of Breaking Bad, where Walter kept doing things that push the bounds of decency, and you just accepted it because of certain situations. And I think that's sort of the way it is here, that you accept it because you feel sorry for her, you understand what she's going through. And you know, as I was watching the film, she reminded me of that woman, Joyce Mitchell, she's the prison worker in America who helped two men break out of the correctional facility in upstate New York 2 years ago. Not saying she's right, what she did was wrong, but I get it. I get why she did it. And I think she's in jail, right? Yeah, I think she got a couple of years in jail, and rightly so. So here I thought Maggie Gyllenhaal was wonderful as Lisa. You know, you see it. She's a good person, but she's a good person who makes bad choices, and she's a good teacher. So you know, it was perfectly reasonable. She wasn't crazy, but circumstances led her to make bad choices, and that's really what happens. Um, so I thought she was wonderful. I don't know that she's been nominated. I don't think she's been nominated for anything, but I know when the film premiered at Sundance in January, there was all sorts of talk. And, you know, that was almost a year ago, but there was all sorts of talk about awards. But I don't think it's happened. But it did win Sundance. It did win a directing award. You know, good film. So the film opens finally today in Hong Kong. It's been available on Netflix for a few months now. You know, Netflix is really screwing up the models for the cinemas, especially the cinemas out here, because they bring stuff here so late usually. Having said that, the next film is just the opposite. But they usually bring films so late here that they're already on Netflix. So if you're in Hong Kong, you can see it in the cinema starting today. If you're not, you can watch it on Netflix right now. So that's called The Kindergarten Teacher. Highly recommended. Good film. Bit slow, but good film. Great performances, even from the little boy. Really good performance. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So the second film, also about a woman, a desperate woman who makes bad choices. I don't know if she was a good woman, but I suppose maybe she was, but she makes bad choices. And this is called Can You Ever Forgive Me? And here's the thing, I just said we don't get films as early as everybody else does, but this one we're getting before most people, because it did play at the Toronto International Film Festival in September. It played at a couple other film festivals. It's had limited release in America, I think like New York and Los Angeles, so that it could qualify for awards. But I don't think it's been on general release in North America, and we've got it today. So there you go. I was wrong. So it's called Can You Ever Forgive Me? It stars Melissa McCarthy, who people might remember her from Ghostbusters, the female version of Ghostbusters, and Spy, St. Vincent, and from Saturday Night Live in the past couple of years as former White House or then White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Shame that you know Sean's out of the picture, so she can't do the character anymore. So, but she was just over the top. And she was recently in another film called what was The Happy Time Murders, which people have said is one of the worst films of 2018. I didn't see it. I saw the trailer and I just thought, oh my God, what are they thinking? So I haven't seen the film. I have no intention of seeing the film. But this one, she redeems herself in anybody who thought that she makes bad choices. Oh, Melissa McCarthy, forget about the real character. So this is the story. It's based on a true story of failing writer Lee Israel and her venture into the business of literary forgery and larceny. And the story is, it takes place 1992 in New York, and Israel, who's played by McCarthy, she hasn't quite hit rock bottom yet, but she's certainly on her way there. She had written a couple, this is true, she had written a couple biographies, one about Tallulah Bankhead, Hollywood screen legend Tallulah Bankhead. She had done Dorothy Kilgallen, who was I think she was a writer, a reporter, I can't remember, in the 50s, if I remember correctly. And she did one on Estee Lauder, which was a flop. The first two were like, yeah, moderately successful. The one Estee Lauder was a flop because apparently Lauder came up with did her own autobiography and released it a few weeks before Israel's book came out. So she basically pipped her to the post, and it was a failure. And she hadn't, let's say 1992, she hasn't really done anything since. So she's basically, she's broke. and she she doesn't have a penny to her name, and she is working on another book. Um, but she's got writer's block, probably because she's become an alcoholic, and just things are not going well for her. And what she does is, to make ends meet, she ends up getting a job as a copy editor at a publishing house. But that doesn't last long, because she's got such a, first of all, there's a drinking habit, but also she's got such a wicked tongue that people just don't stand for it. When you're famous, they'll stand for it. When you're not famous, they don't stand for it. And so, now she's really in dire straits. And so what she does is, she has a signed letter from Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn had written to her years earlier, and she decides to sell it just to make some money, because she's got nothing. She's got to feed her cat. She's got no money. And what she realizes when she sells that letter is that she can make quite a bit of money. Well, not quite a bit of money, but a few hundred here or there, or maybe $50 for letters, by forging letters written by famous writers and actors, 20th century writers and actors who are dead, and basically embellish letters. What she does is, she takes their style of writing and writes a letter, and puts it on stationery that makes it look like their own stationery, and sells it. Amazing, amazing. And along with her new friend, an eccentric coke dealer and con man by the name of Jack Hawk, who's played by Richard E. Grant, a British actor, Richard E. Grant, who's in The Finest and Jackie and The Hitman's Bodyguard, many other movies over the years. The two pass off more than 400 of these fake letters over the course of about a year and a half, until the FBI catches up with them. This is true. This is amazing. So this is what the film is all about. Now, as I said, McCarthy is known for her style of, sort of over-the-top comedy. Here she dials it way back. I mean, this is a funny film, but not like a Roll in the Aisles funny. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy funny. And she does it well. She plays Israel's very dowdy, feisty, with his acid tongue. She's desperate. She's this middle-aged woman who's broke. This is the way the real Lee Israel was. And if I have a picture of the real Lee Israel on my website in my review of this film, so you can see that she doesn't look exactly like her, but she's got, in broad strokes, she does look like her. And very interestingly, Julianne Moore was supposed to play this part originally, and Moore stepped away because of other commitments. I can't see her doing that. Forget about, she doesn't have the body shape, and I can't imagine she'd put on 50 pounds or wear a fat suit. It just wouldn't work. But I can't see her being this. This is a role for Melissa McCarthy, and she does it really well. And then it was a good choice to bring her on. And I have to say that Richard E. Grant, who plays Jack Hawk, he's excellent. Now, the real Jack Hawk apparently was much younger. He's since passed away. The real Jack Hawk was much younger than Richard E. Grant at the time, and he was American, whereas Richard E. Grant is British. Doesn't matter, because Grant I think he captures what I would think, how I would think Hawk was. That he was this rogue, he was this flamboyant rogue. Because I don't want to reveal. Let's just say he was a flamboyant rogue. Let's put it that way. And he was a con man, and he was charming. He was a charming con man, and I think he captures that really, really well. And I can see, as you're watching this film, as I was watching the film, that these two must have loved scamming the very people who sniffed at her biographies. Because especially the Estee Lauder one was such a failure, and they're like, these literary people like, she writes this trashy biography. And I think, this was her way of getting, well, I mean, she needed the money, but I think also she enjoyed it so much because she enjoyed it because she was writing, which is what she loves to do. But also that she was scamming these people who turned their noses up at her. So to me, that was quite enjoyable. So as enjoyable as their two performances are, I think it's for me, what I loved about this film, I loved a lot about this film, but what I really loved about this film is that it's this old adage of truth being stranger than fiction. It's amazing. Like you just can't make this stuff up. It's just amazing that it's true. Now the story, of course, for the timelines have changed. A few incidents have been merged together. A few characters have been created, for the movie. But generally, this is a true story. You can read all about it on the internet. So amazing. And what is also so incredible is that even after some of these people who bought these letters, even after they were told by the FBI that these letters were forged, they didn't care. They sold them anyways. They sold them as genuine. They're all a bunch of cons. And apparently somebody had interviewed, I read an article the other day, somebody had interviewed some of the people who were conned, and they're recalling this episode with humor because she didn't get a lot for each letter. She got $50, $100, a couple $100. It wasn't a lot, but multiply that by 400. But even when you multiply it by 400, let's say it was she got on average 200, and she had 400 letters. Not a lot of money over a year and a half, and she's probably splitting it with Hawk as well, and she probably drank a lot too. So I don't know how much she ended up with at the end of it, and I don't want to reveal what happens at the end. So I really enjoyed this movie. I believe both actors were nominated for Golden Globes. I don't know if they're going to win, but glad that they were nominated. I think just love this movie. When you watch it, you're going to cheer for her, even though what she's doing is wrong. You're going to cheer for her. You might even be a little jealous of her chutzpah. So I'd say, I enjoyed this film. Check it out. Opens today in Hong Kong. I know it opens February the 1st in the UK. It's playing in a couple cities in America right now, so it'll probably have a larger release in the new year. So amazing. We got it first. Ha! So that's called Can You Ever Forgive Me? And that's it. So I am going to put my heater back on because it's freezing. And go see some more movies. Next week is Aquaman, which I'm seeing this week. So I'll tell you all about it. And the other one I'm going to talk about next week is a French film. Not French. I think it's Belgian film called, because it's in French. It's in French and Belgian. But it's a Belgian film called Girl. And it won, I think it won, did it win the Palme d'Or or the Camera d'Or? I think it won the Camera d'Or at Cannes this past year. I saw it the other day. Wow. But controversial. So that's what I'll talk about next week, as far as I know. Okay. Have a good week. Bye.